We're back. 5 bets, 5 minutes. We appreciate you rolling with an off day. You know, we take a day off in the middle of the week. You're like, what the hell's going on here? It was a lighter day in the NBA, so that's nice. I don't want to get in the way of Ja because it's kind of hard to get in the way of Ja because you're going to get steamrolled right over there. So let's let Mr. Morant have his time here. He will be a focus. He will be somebody that we will be targeting in tonight's 5 and 5. So 5 bets, 5 minutes. We'll start the clock momentarily. I'm going to ask that you hit the thumbs up button, that you subscribe, and thank you for being part of the now 50,000 plus members that we have here on the Odd Shopper channel. All of that, let's go ahead and officially start the clock. Now, with everything rolling here, you can see our plays are up. That's fine. We'll save time. And let's start with LaMelo Ball over 8.5 assists. That's what we're targeting. Our first, very, very, very first play, LaMelo Ball is going to get us 10 dimes. But we don't need 10 dimes. We just need 9, and that's why we're laying the 140 on that. This is a tough matchup for the Charlotte Hornets because every game is a tough matchup for the Charlotte Hornets, even when you are a short road favorite, which I don't really get, against the Houston Rockets. So this game provides some interesting angles. And LaMelo is not just going to stop. Like, LaMelo isn't picking up the phone, asking who's all running, and then realizing that they're going up against the Houston Rockets in Houston and hanging the phone up saying, that's it, coach. LaMelo's going to be out there. And Houston, with their backcourt and wing defense that has really suffered, although they've been able to score, and they've got some young budding maybe stars to be. I love Melo being able to take him. And look, it's not just Melo to Rozier, as we've seen. They've been able to adapt without having a heavy volume scorer like that intact. So I like Ball to just get us 9. That's all we need is 9. We're going to get double-digit rebounds from Luka Doncic. We're actually going to get double-digit rebounds from a couple of guys, but Luka's going to be the next one that we hit. Let's go over 9.5 boards for Doncic tonight against the now, 3 straight win Atlanta Hawk team. The Mavericks are struggling. Luka's playing hurt. The number is down. It's probably a 10.5. If healthy, a 10.5, minus 105, minus 110 type of play. But we're getting him on a little bit of a low swing here. And the other part of this is, as good as Atlanta is as far as scoring and as well as they've been able to more likely outscore than hold defensively, they're not really built to keep Luka off the glass as far as a full-time job. And that's just a lot of teams, but Atlanta specifically. So there's a big hole here for Doncic to grab some rebounds. Speaking of which, I told you, so long as this is under 13.5 rebounds for Julius Randle, it's the one stat that I think won't be impacted nearly as much as any other stat for him with the return of R.J. Barrett. So far, so good.
Joe Harris only having stats from steals yesterday is something special.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Curry ended up being a functional member of society after not.
Rather fucking annoying. Yeah, I think he scored 20 in the fourth.
And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Wednesday, January 18th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. We've got a 9-game slate today. A little bit different than what we've had for the past 2 days. We're going back to a bigger slate, but at the same time, 9 is the upper bound. It's still a good size slate. It doesn't irritate me the same way 11 and 12 does. So we actually have a lot of fun stuff to break down. 1 or 2 spots that we can't really talk about as of right now, which is clouding the ownership. The highest owned guy projected on both sites right now is Norm Powell. We'll have that conversation when we get there, but Clippers are difficult to talk about for today on the back-to-back. Either way, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how are you?
I'm good. Looking forward to 9 games is reasonable. I probably prefer it to 4 games. I don't know, 5 to 8 is still probably my preferred range. So it's just right on that outer band. But 9 games is fine. I'm with you. At least it's not 11 or 12. So yeah, should be a good one. A lot of obviously good players on this slate. Should be interesting to talk about.
I prefer 4 to 9 just from the work perspective.
Yeah.
That I just got to do less.
Yeah, but if you're aggregating, it doesn't matter. Which
Also
you're
true.
not, but
no. Which you're not either. We're using the projections at stokastic.com. All right. We got 9 games to break down. I don't think that we have a lot of time to mess around. I'm not going to bring up the fact that you were a 1v1 swap away from winning yesterday. So
appreciate you not bringing it up.
Yep. I definitely didn't want to bring that up for you at all. So let's just get into it. How about that?
Yeah.
The Atlanta Hawks are 3.5-point underdogs in Dallas, 231 total. And for Atlanta, everybody's healthy. Everybody's in. We saw Onyeka Okongwu start on Monday in Clint Capella's first game back. I don't know if they're going to keep that going. I don't think that it really matters for today at all. No ownership at all coming into the Atlanta side. I find them to be at least mildly interesting given the 230 total here. So I like getting to the starters as GPP pivots. I don't see any priorities.
Yeah, that's where I am as well. I feel like that's kind of where we've been on Atlanta for a while now. I am interested in who starts at center solely because we know that Capella was on a minutes limit last game. And I had said before that game that I kind of was viewing it where if Capella starts, you're probably just getting a split down the middle between him and Okongwu. But if Okongwu started, that there was a good chance you were going to get 27, 28 minutes for him. And that's what we saw. So if Okongwu started again today, I would have some mild interest just because he is 5,400. And if he does play 27, 28 minutes, he's going to look pretty good. But the other risk factor there is even if he starts again, there's a decent chance that you see it go from 27 to 25 or something like that. And, as they sort of ramp Capella back up. So certainly very risky and not anything I'd be prioritizing. Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, both reasonably priced, 9,500 on DraftKings for Young, 8K for Murray. Neither one getting much ownership. Slow-paced matchup, both very good players, clearly, but on a 9-game slate, you're not going to have any issue finding good guard plays to get to. So I think they are both just in that bucket of guys that have very high ceilings, but that you're also just not building around. Same can be said for John Collins at 5,600. That price tag has come down a bit, but with Capella back, you can't expect to get any backup center minutes from Collins, which are really important. You had sent me those stats the other day on his 3-point shooting that I mentioned on the show, just unbelievably bad this year, which is really hard to explain. But we also know his usage rate is down, which could be a result of being an unbelievably bad 3-point shooter now. But one way or the other, it's John Collins at 5,600. Can he have a big game? Sure. Is there anything that suggests he's going to? No, not really.
There we go. If you were going to get to one guy from Atlanta, is it Trae or is it DeJounte Murray?
It's probably Trae.
Okay.
It's probably Collins at the price and position.
Yeah. I find Murray, Young, Hunter, and Collins to be all very similar relative to their salary and positional eligibility.
I assume that the Bogdan, Collins, Hunter pieces are actually going to be the most useful just because of the cheap prices and the position, even though clearly they're not the guys that you're excited to get to from Atlanta. They're probably just going to be easier to fit into lineups.
Agreed. For Dallas, Luka's probable. Dorian Finney-Smith is back for the first time in ages. Josh Green is back for the first time in ages. Tim Hardaway Jr., however, is out. Still no Maxey, no McKinley Wright. Before we do anything with Dorian Finney-Smith or Josh Green, I want to start with Luka here. 12,400 on DraftKings, 12,400 on FanDuel. I have him projected for a staggering amount of fantasy points today. Given the amount of minutes that he's been playing, losing Tim Hardaway in this spot, I think is probably a benefit for Luka in terms of somehow he might even have the ball even more. I actually love the idea of getting to him, and I think that he's basically the best play on today's slate.
Yeah, it's where we've been at for a while on him now. It's just different than earlier in the year when you were getting Luka around this price tag. I was typically not getting to him. Same goes when Jokic was up here, Giannis was up here, because especially on these larger slates, you have so many guards in that 8 to 9, 10K range that are just a lot less expensive and still give you a really high ceiling. But with the minutes that Luka's been playing, it just changes everything. We have him projected 5 points ahead of the next closest player on this slate, which is Jokic. I think you could certainly make a case for it being more because we have that difference. We have that gap with a 36.5-minute projection on Luka. He is playing more minutes than that if this game's competitive. He's been playing the entire second half of pretty much every game recently. And sure, you're getting Finney-Smith back, but he's just replacing Tim Hardaway Jr. now. So you still have all of those minutes available where Luka's just going to play a ton. He's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. That goes without saying. So it's just, I've been back to just kind of building around Luka and then saying, I know I'm going to have to make some kind of questionable plays to get there at that price, but it's just very likely to be worth it given the way he's producing and how many minutes he's playing.
Yeah, I have Jokic like a point below where we do, and I have Luka 5 points ahead of where we do. I have basically a 12-point gap because I have Luka in for 38 minutes.
Right.
You could tell me that that's even slightly low and you want to go to 39 and I would believe it. That's a chasm between these pay up options to the degree that I can't even remember seeing it like this. I can't remember a gap on a 9-game slate like that for the top guy.
It's I said it the other day. It's the closest thing I can remember to Westbrook on OKC.
Yeah.
Without Durant and Harden.
And I feel like Russ at that time was getting like 13K price tags.
Well, right. Yeah. Russ was like 13. I think he might have even gotten north of that, but it was just like, it broke everything. And Russ, I think, was a little bit more consistent then because he was just, triple doubling every game and, rebounding at a ridiculous rate and all of that. But it was the same kind of thing where he was just breaking the slate because it's like, well, I can build a good lineup and not go to the questionable value and not play Russ, or in this case, Luka, and then just lose because I'm giving up 70 fantasy points. Or I can play a bunch of questionable guys and just plug in Russ or Luka, regardless of what their salary is, because I'm still starting with 70 fantasy points. And that's kind of just, how it is here. Like, yeah, he's going to have a down game here and there, and you're going to be screwed. But that goes for every player anyway. Like, he's still, I think, one of the most mispriced players on the slate at $12,400.
I'm on the same page. I have him in a lot of lineups after my first run. Now we get Dorian Finney-Smith back, who's stepping into basically no usage like he normally does. I have no idea how much he's going to play today. He's coming back from a right adductor strain. I gave him 24 minutes. I don't really think it's all that important here. Spencer Dinwiddie probably sees the ball a little bit more. He's also, to me, too expensive and not all that good when he's playing alongside of Luka, especially if Luka's playing the whole game, basically. Christian Wood
is out there.
Yeah, Christian Wood's fine, but 8,600 is a pretty healthy price tag. Even with Tim Hardaway out now, with these guys coming back, like, I don't really see anything else from Dallas that I'm trying to get to.
No, I don't see anything that looks particularly good at all. If you want to just, hope you run into the massive Christian Wood game, sure, it's there. He's 4.5% owned. We have him projected for 8% ownership. But to your point with Dinwiddie, the salaries come up a bit. He's 7K. He's playing really big minutes. But when he shares the floor with Luka and Christian Wood, he just does not really have a role. And then with Luka playing as many minutes as he is, you're not getting that many minutes where Dinwiddie's out there without him either. If you want to gamble on a $3,600 Finney-Smith, I'm assuming he's going to start. I don't know how many minutes he'll play, but if you want to, roll the dice on him, if he's starting, sure, he's 3,600. It can't go that poorly. I guess it can, but there's obviously plenty of upside for him at that price if he's starting. But to me, it's pretty much Luka and then a whole bunch of stuff that I don't really want.
We are on the exact same page.
It is probably worth noting that if Josh Green is back, that is another actual body in their rotation. So maybe Luka loses a couple of minutes there. Maybe Dinwiddie loses a couple of minutes there. But it's not going to change a ton. Like, Luka's still going to project as the best option.
Craziness. Yeah. Craziness for me for Luka today. Even if you just want to say that he's going to play 36 minutes, I still think he's a fantastic play. So
yeah, exactly. Like, we have him at 36 and a half minutes and still eclipsing Jokic by 5 fantasy points.
We go to your Washington Wizards next. 6-point dogs in New York, 220 total. Only thing that we have to worry about here for the Wizards is whether or not Bradley Beal is playing. But the good news is, I'm not even sure it matters. If Beal is in, this might be the worst team on the slate for DFS. Even if he's out, maybe it's allowing us to get to someone like DeLon Wright at 3,800 for some value. But I think Washington looks outwardly awful. The highest guy I got in a sim was Kyle Kuzma at 3.5%. There is just nothing here.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. And the issue is that Beal's been out so much recently that prices have started to adjust anyway. If he's out and you want to get to some $8,200 Kuzma or $8,900 Porzingis back in Madison Square Garden, then sure, like, they clearly have very high ceilings. Porzingis has averaged 1.3 DraftKings points per minute without Beal this year. He's likely to play around 34 minutes. Kuzma's averaged 1.1. He's likely to play 36, 37 minutes. They both look pretty good, but again, it's a 9-game slate, so pretty good doesn't really turn you into priority. It just makes you somebody that you can get to here and there. If Beal is in, you still have tournament upside on those guys, but it's obviously taking a hit playing alongside Beal. And then similarly, you have Monte Morris and DeLon Wright, who are now playing minutes alongside each other. We saw them close once again against Golden State. You ended up getting to 31 minutes for Morris, 28 for DeLon Wright. That's pretty appealing if Bradley Beal is out, when you have a $5K price tag on Morris and a $3,800 price tag on Wright. But if Beal is in, even if they do play a couple minutes alongside each other, you're certainly not expecting them to both approach 30 minutes. So it just, again, becomes a spot that you're not really looking to get to.
Yeah, I gave them 2 minutes alongside of each other. It takes Jordan Goodwin out of the rotation for me if Beal is back. There's just not, to me, there's nothing here. They look truly terrible.
Agreed.
Stephen Leibowitz just scared the shit out of me here. He said Luka was at 42.5 points, rebounds, assists on Prize Picks. And I was just like, all right, I guess I'm like playing today and like putting everything that I can on that right now. But I went and quickly checked. It is 52.5. So I still like the over, but 42.5 was, he might get that on points alone.
42.5 would just scare me into thinking that like he has a broken leg and I just don't know it yet.
Yeah. He got amputated earlier today. Right. It's still decent. I don't have anything else for the Wizards, so let's go to the Knicks. For the New York Knicks, they're basically like the opposite of the Wizards in that they're going to play 6 guys, an absolute ton. RJ Barrett played 49 minutes on Monday, obviously in overtime, but that's still 44. He was my number 1 contender on DraftKings today, 6,600 as a small forward. I gave him 37 minutes, but that number could be 42 very, very easily. And it's not even like a crazy projection. Even at 37, I like him. I'm just happy to get to the starters here. A little surprised to see like I don't want to say the lack of ownership, but I like these guys a lot more than the public does.
Yeah, it feels like peak Toronto, where it's just like, yeah, the price tags are expensive. I think the issue really you run into with New York, and it's the same thing you were doing with Toronto, is that for anybody that's done projections, you'll like understand what I'm saying. Like, you just can't project guys for 40 plus minutes. Enough shit happens in an NBA game that it's very aggressive to go there. Obviously, I mean, you can, but it's just it's tough to get there. But realistically, if this game just goes according to plan, you're getting 40 plus minutes from these guys. And so it ends up, you kind of project them for 36, 37, 38 minutes when that's going to end up being 2-3 minutes too low and, in a normal game. So it creates a really difficult situation because like just so much has to go right for somebody to actually play 40 plus minutes, or not even so much has to go right. Nothing can go wrong. Like, you only get, if you're going to play 40, 41 minutes in a game, there's only 7 or 8 minutes that you can give up. So any amount of foul trouble, any amount of briefly rolling your ankle, any amount of the second unit gets a little bit hot and just stays in a few extra minutes, and you're just done. You're not getting there. So like, you can't, from a median standpoint, very easily get there, but it just leads to this situation where I think there's just, maybe it's like the ceilings on these Knicks guys are just a little bit further away, a little bit higher compared to the median than they are for a lot of other plays. And it just creates a situation where I like getting to them in tournaments where they're just not really pulling ownership. I mean, I get there's going to be a lot of center plays on this slate, but if you're going to get 32 plus minutes from Mitchell Robinson at 5,500 against Washington, that's going to be pretty appealing. Brunson and Randall are priced up, but they're both playing huge minutes. They're both very good point per minute guys. Barrett at 6,600, the only guy pulling ownership, small forward eligible, and has the potential to play 45 minutes. Like, they just all look good.
Yeah. Grimes' price is starting to fall. He's down to 4,700 shooting guard small forward now. It's getting to the point where the minutes are sort of justified now for what you're getting. Like, he's not exciting. He's a 0.7 guy. I don't like touting him at all, but at no ownership, if that price continues to drop a couple more $100, it starts to become a guy that you got to look at.
Yeah. And shooting guard small forward as well.
Yeah. But like, I look at Mason Plumlee, second overall in our ownership at 27.5%, and we've got Mitchell Robinson at 4%. Like, that's just the easiest decision in the world to me if I'm playing a GPP. Quickly, he's going to need to see his price come down a bit. He only got the 21 minutes on Monday. Could just as easily play 34 today, and they come out of somebody else's pocket in the next one. But in terms of any of these 5 starters, I'm just happy to get to them. Who is your preferred option? Like, did you have a guy that you think you would get to the most?
Probably Barrett, just because of the position and the price. Honestly, at that ownership, it could easily be Robinson. But I know the opportunity cost that's coming at center as well.
Yeah, it is Barrett for me as well. So we're on the same page there.
The other interesting thing about Robinson too is just going back to what we were just talking about, and the fact that I'm pretty confident, even at 10, 15 in the morning, that I'm going to be building around Luka. Mitchell Robinson plays a different position than Luka, and he's cheap. So where you do have people paying up for Jokic, you have people, going to some questionable value plays elsewhere. Robinson's going to help me get to Luka.
Yes, he is. And he's helping me get to Luka right now. Schedule for the rest of the day. Coming up after this, NFL strategy show. So we're going to be breaking down this weekend's NFL playoff slate. Adam and I will be back for the deeper dive at 5:30. We'll have live before lock back for 6:30, taking you all the way up until 8, at which point you will get PGA live before lock from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock for the Amex this weekend. Might actually play a little bit of golf this week. I haven't played in a bit. And then finally, I got to mention it every time that we're here. 5 days free if you have never signed up at Stokastic before. The link is in the description of this video. That gives you access to our projections, our ownership, the boom bust tool, things that we're going to talk about all the time, the player compare tool, so you can do 1v1s and 2v2s based on all of our data. And finally, our brand new lineup generator. This is the tool that I think you're going to be most interested in. We generate thousands and thousands of lineups for the slate. We get rid of all of the lineups that we think are garbage, that don't grade out all that well. We allow you to sift through them, to swap out players if you really just want to do something like that. We show you the projection. We show you the relative ownership. It's as good of a tool as you're going to find in the industry. If you're just trying to play like up to 20 lineups, this is the thing you want. And you can check it out for free based on this 5 days free. The Charlotte Hornets, 2-point favorites in Houston, 235 total. For Charlotte, Gordon Hayward's doubtful. Cody Martin's doubtful. Kelly Oubre is still out for a while. Lots of ownership coming in. I've already mentioned the ownership to Mason Plumlee. Jalen McDaniels is 26% owned. LaMelo Ball is 25% owned. PJ Washington's 11% owned. Obviously, it's easy to want to like a lot of the things going up against Houston. That's fine for me. I kind of want to flip-flop that LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier ownership just based on what I see out of the gate. But talk to me about Charlotte. What do you see? Because I think they look good.
Yeah, it's a great spot. It's a situation where they're probably going a little bit over-owned in some spots. For example, Mason Plumlee right now pulling 28% ownership, 17% chance of being optimal. So that's a pretty high optimal percentage for a center. But still just getting, even more ownership doesn't mean it's a bad play. It just means that there's going to be spots you can pivot to and differentiate your lineup without really giving up too much. PJ Washington's ownership looks about correct. Ball and McDaniels both look about correct as well, which kind of surprised me on Ball just because there are so many good guard options. But it is a matchup against Houston. It is a very good LaMelo Ball playing a lot of minutes. I've said it several times now. My only concern with Ball this year is that his rebounding rate has come down a bit from where it was last year. And I think that's very likely because the Hornets are just playing a center for 48 minutes now. You're not getting those small lineups from Charlotte. So it makes sense that LaMelo wouldn't be rebounding at quite the same rate. But even with a 7.8% rebounding percentage this year, he's at 1.35 DraftKings points per minute. And if he avoids foul trouble, he's probably playing 35, 36 minutes. So at least. So still going to look really good. I'm with you on Terry Rozier as far as like being a good tournament play. I don't think he's the same level of priority as some of these other pieces just because he's not exactly underpriced. He's not the best point per minute guy, but you're still just going to have those games where Rozier goes out there, plays 35, 36 minutes and runs into a massive game. Also, if LaMelo were to get into foul trouble, that's likely to benefit Rozier as well, just as far as getting more minutes without LaMelo on the floor. So it's not going to take much for a big game from Rozier here either. Jalen McDaniels pulling plenty of ownership, $4,900 small forward, power forward. I get it. That's another spot though, where he's not a great point per minute guy. He's in a good matchup, but 0.87 DraftKings points per minute on average this year. I think he's going to project from a median standpoint a little bit better than other people priced around him. But just off the top of my head from other spots we've talked about so far, there's not that big of a gap between McDaniels and Quentin Grimes or between McDaniels and DeAndre Hunter or between McDaniels and Bogdan Bogdanovic. Like there's going to be a lot of other 5K-ish small forward options that can get you 0.9 fantasy points per minute.
Is there anything else we should touch on here?
Dennis Smith Jr. is back to just playing mid-20s in minutes. Again, I don't think that's any sort of a priority, but he is pulling 8% ownership with a 12% chance of being optimal. I think he's getting slept on a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I have about 10% right now. With Cody Martin out, those minutes are just going to be there for DSJ. As weird as that sounds.
Do you have any read on what they're doing with the backup center?
They went back to Mark Williams this past day. They had gone to Nick Richards for 2 straight days. I went to Mark Williams in this case. I don't have a great feel for whether it's going to be Williams or Nick Richards, but it seems like it's going to be one of those 2 guys, and they are just playing straight backup center. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I was wrong with Mark Williams 3 or 4 nights ago and had a decent chunk. Well, I guess it was probably that Thursday slate. I had a decent chunk of Mark Williams, and then he did not step on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask is because Williams is 3,100, Richards is 3K. They're both good point per minute guys. Williams this year is at 1.2 DraftKings points per minute. Richards is at 1.03. If I knew who was going to play, I would like to get to whichever one is going to play. With it being a guessing game, I'm probably with you that I would go Williams. One, he's just the better point per minute guy. So if he plays, you have a better chance of getting there. And then also he played last game. So I don't know. I just assume he plays today. But I kind of wish I knew the answer to that because whoever it is actually a pretty interesting tournament to play.
On the Houston side, we still have the Q tag on Kevin Porter Jr. Otherwise, everybody is in. If KPJ is back, I don't find Houston all that interesting other than the fact that this is just like a great game environment, but I think everybody's already priced where they're supposed to be. It's just a Houston team that doesn't really deviate when everybody is at full strength. And now they have Jayshawn Tate back. So that's an extra body to complicate matters here. If KPJ is out, you're going to see Jalen Green look a little bit better. You're going to see Şengün look a bit better. They were running the offense through Şengün in that last one. I find it hard to really want to prioritize anything from Houston right now.
Yeah, so I mean, the Kevin Porter Jr. news is huge because if he's out, Jalen Green's going to look better. So is Şengün, like you said. The issue is that the salaries have come up a little bit. I think Şengün is interesting even if Porter is in. And the reason is that we've seen his playing time trend up when he's not in foul trouble recently. Barring foul trouble or them being extremely shorthanded, Bruno Fernando hasn't been in the rotation anymore typically. And so you're just getting like true starter minutes from Alperen Şengün and then Garuba's backing him up. So I think that does just make him look a little bit better. You can go from projecting 26, 27 minutes to like 29, 30, and it's going to make him look good. But clearly he'll be more of a priority if Porter is out. One spot to pay attention to as well, and he benefits if Porter's out, but Jabari Smith still 5,400 in a good spot. He's kind of like the one starter here that didn't see his price tag. Well, yeah, even Eric Gordon saw his go up. Jabari Smith just is still sitting in that, cheap low 5K range. He's not a great fantasy producer, but he has seen a nice bump in production when Kevin Porter Jr. is out this year. If Porter Jr. is in, I think Smith's just sort of a guy that you can get to differentiate. If Porter is out, I actually like that price tag on Jabari Smith.
Yeah, Jabari Smith is the guy that I'm getting to the most, so happy to hear it.
Yeah,
I have nothing else for Houston though.
Me neither. I mean, it's a good spot. This is a very, very good tournament team, I think. The reason you're just not seeing that much ownership is that salaries did come up, and right now Porter Jr. is projected in. So from a median standpoint, they kind of just look neutral. But it shouldn't surprise anybody if just one of these guys ends up destroying their salary, whether Porter Jr. is in or not. And if Porter Jr. is in, 7,900 is not a bad price for him either.
I didn't expect to like anything for Cleveland when I first clicked on it. And then I realized that Donovan Mitchell was doubtful, and that changes the game up a little bit. We've got 25% ownership coming into Evan Mobley, 20% coming into Karis LeVert, another 17 coming into Jared Allen. Garland, not as big as you would expect at just 10%, but clearly looks a little bit better. I think LeVert is the best option from Cleveland right now, just given the price tag and the positionality. I would be over that ownership number, but the starters here, the starters that aren't named Isaac Okoro just look a little bit better with no Donovan Mitchell. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, you get a bump for pretty much everybody by taking Mitchell off the floor. Without him on the floor this season, Garland sees a bump. He's up to 1.2 DraftKings points per minute, 450 minutes played, 30% usage rate, 36% assist percentage. He is $8,100, so a pretty reasonable price tag still. Karis LeVert overall without Mitchell on the floor, 0.96 DraftKings points per minute. If you put Garland on, which is going to be most of the minutes today, that production should come down a little bit, but it's still going to be better than when LeVert plays, the minutes alongside both Mitchell and Garland. So I'm with you. He's just going to look good here at 5,100 with shooting guard, small forward eligibility. Happy to get there. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, not overly impacted, but they're just going to look good at their respective salaries either way. LeVert this year, 0.9 DraftKings points per minute when Garland is on and Mitchell's off. So still a bump, just not as big of a bump. Mobley, 1.08 DraftKings points per minute. Allen, 1.14 without Mitchell on the floor. all of these guys I think are just very reasonably priced and look pretty good. Ricky Rubio played 17 minutes last game. That's interesting to pay attention to going forward.
Yeah, I gave him 16. I don't know how feasible it is because I still think they're just going to be taking their sweet time getting him stretched
no
back out again.
Not to.
Right. It doesn't matter at all. But yeah, LeVert is the guy that I've got my eye on the most here for Cleveland. Fun matchup here just because Mobley versus Jaren Jackson Jr. is just like a really cool matchup of like the future of the center position in the NBA in like 5 years as these like pseudo stretches. Now, obviously, Evan Mobley shooting like 18% from three, but like the goal is for him to shoot a little bit more and shoot a bit better as he ages. Just fun matchup for these guys. The Memphis side of this one, though, everybody's back. Everybody's healthy. John Conchar is available. I guess Xavier Tillman, Kennedy Chandler, and Vince Williams are available. None of that matters. Do I like Memphis? Yeah. I find them to be very, very, very difficult to want to play today.
Yeah, it's tough when they're healthy, and you also have the difficult matchup against Cleveland. It's just one of those teams where there's no ownership coming in. If you want to swap Mason Plumlee to some Steven Adams, then sure, but Plumlee clearly projects better matchup. Clark is back, so you lose a couple minutes on the Steven Adams projection. It's just one of those situations where, like, if somebody laid you 28-1 odds, you're going to take Steven Adams versus Mason Plumlee. But within a given lineup, you just have such a higher chance of success for Mason Plumlee that most of the time you're going to just have a pivot somewhere else and not have to worry about it. John Morant, clearly a high ceiling, but again, same kind of thing. LaMelo just is going to look better given the matchup, given the fact that Morant projects for fewer minutes because Memphis just doesn't run their guys into the ground. So as a pivot, sure, but he's just not going to look as good. Desmond Bane's up to 7,400, makes it tough to get to him with this team healthy. I don't really see anything that I expect to get to.
Now, for Morant, I look at him and it's just like, oh, well, I'll just pay $200 less for Shea.
Right.
Like that right there is just the same lack of ownership and to me a better play. And that's not even accounting for like someone like LaMelo, who I actually do think like looks better than those guys. So it's tricky. Got to get away from Memphis though. Don't have to get away from Prize Picks, the presenting sponsor. I know Prize Picks wants you guys to hit the like button, 440 viewers, 85 likes. You should hit the like button for this comfortable shirt I have today. It was the hoodie earlier this week. Now it's the shirt. They're both fantastic. What is also fantastic? $100 instant match deposit bonus if you click the link in the description and then go sign up. You're putting together player props into what are essentially parlay cards. My recommendation, put together 5 on one card. You can net up to 10x your entry fee if you hit all of them. And you'll still even get a little bit back if you only hit 3 or even 4. You can do this across sports, NBA, NFL, college basketball, soccer, golf, MMA, all sorts of good stuff. Women's Euro basket, which I can't imagine any of you guys know anything about, but who knows? Maybe that's the spot where there's the biggest edge. Adam and I are going to talk about NBA props for right now. We're going to go straight to raw points. We're going to start it off with Luka Doncic at 34.5.
Over.
Yeah, I have the over as well. I got him at 36 and change. And I personally would just like to cheer for that one.
Yeah.
On the opposite side, we've got Atlanta. Trae Young is at 25.5.
Over.
Agreed. I got him at 27.7. How about our boy John Collins at 13.5? I actually think I have the under.
Need to scroll down and find them. How many?
13.5.
Slight under. We have it 13-1.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. Let's get one more in here. This is an interesting one given today's slate. We're going to stay on this same game. Spencer Dinwiddie, 16.5.
16.5 for Dinwiddie. Would help if I could spell Dinwiddie.
It would.
Over? I'm not very confident in it, but we have it at 17-1.
I have it at 15 too, so I would actually be taking the under there. That scares the hell out of me though. Fun props available for you. And that's just from the Atlanta-Dallas game. There are infinitely more available for you, and we could help you out both on our YouTube channel and at Stokastic.com. We move on to game number 5. The Miami Heat are 1.5 point favorites in New Orleans, 220 total. Q tag on Kyle Lowry. Caleb Martin is probable. So these guys are essentially at full strength. The highest owned guy on DraftKings is Bam Adebayo at 3%. No one else crosses 1. Bam gets to 12% on FanDuel, where no one else crosses 1. I would prefer to have 0 shares of anybody from the Miami Heat.
Yeah, another team that just looks wholly unappealing because they've been banged up recently and now they are not. Pretty decent spot to get to these guys, but the salaries are the problem. Bam's the only guy on DraftKings pulling more than 1% ownership right now. He's fine, but he's an $8,800 center on a slate where there's going to be a lot of good center plays, and I've already made it clear that I expect to be getting to a lot of Luka, which probably means paying down a little bit more than the field at center. So I'm going to make it tough to get there. The hero piece at 7,300 is kind of interesting, just given how many minutes he was playing prior to his injury. Like if you see him just come out and start playing 38 minutes consistently again, that's a pretty decent price tag, but he only played 31 last game. I don't feel overly confident that he just runs into 38 here. So on this slate with so many good plays, I don't really see anything.
We're on the same page. On the Pelicans side, it's the same thing we've been used to as of now. Brandon Ingram still out. Zion still out. Herb Jones doubtful. So same rotation we've seen, I would assume, for the past 3 games, at which point we've got Najee Marshall in for 24% ownership. Feels a little high to me at 5,600. He's 36% owned on FanDuel at 5,800. The other guy pulling double digits in ownership is Jose Alvarado at 4,400. That one I tend to agree with. There is some minutes upside here. Could get upwards of 30. Hard to project very aggressively for minutes, but they're certainly available for him. Dyson Daniels works as a value option. Joe Val played 35 minutes on Monday. CJ McCollum's price came down to $9K. When you look at the Pelicans, what do you want to do? I find them very fascinating.
Yeah, so do I. I think that the pieces getting ownership are where I would look first. Alvarado at 4,400. Like you said, you're not projecting north of 30 minutes, but he's a fantasy point per minute guy. If he just plays his normal, like 23, 24 minutes, he's fine. And if he does find his way into the closing lineup, which is relatively likely, now that there's a couple of spots that aren't like guaranteed closers. Trey Murphy doesn't always close. Dyson Daniels certainly doesn't have to close. So there's different ways that Alvarado can get in there. And it's nice too, because the Pelicans have enough wings and enough length that like Alvarado can close over pretty much anybody.
Especially against the Heat.
Right. And just like from a positional standpoint, like obviously he's not going to close over Trey Murphy and play the same position as Trey Murphy, but Dyson Daniels just moves down and you're good. So it's pretty easy for him to find his way into the closing lineup. I like getting there. The concern is just, you are paying, you're getting a 22% owned backup that very easily could play 24 minutes. Like there's still a relatively low floor, but the path to a big game for him is pretty obvious, given that it's easy for him to get into the closing lineup this year without Ingram or Zion, or that didn't sort right. So I think he's at about 0.97 DraftKings points per minute without them on the floor. I'm trying to get that pulled up now, but 0.94 DraftKings points per minute without Zion or Ingram on the floor. Marshall's at 0.92. He's likely to play mid 30s. So I get the ownership coming in there as well. Again, probably a little bit high relative to optimal percentage, but that's not solely what you're building around. You don't need 9 under-owned guys in your lineup. He's just going to be a solid glue guy that you can just plug in as a mid 5K range forward and then get to the guards and centers that you want. Valanciunas is very interesting to me because on the one hand, like you said, he played 35 minutes last game, but the fact that he did that without sharing the floor with Nance still scares me, because recently they've been just making Larry Nance the straight backup center, but like in the sense where Nance plays backup center minutes, not where Nance just splits minutes with Joval. That can end at any time. So it is concerning, but I do think it at least allows you to go from, earlier in the year prior to the Nance injury, when they were both in, you were typically projecting like 25 minutes from Joval, 23 from Nance, or 24, 24. I think you can get to like 27, 28 minute projections for Joval now, just given that Nance has played straight backup, like a backup role recently. Makes it a little bit more likely that you get the same thing here. So 6,900 for a guy that averages 1.2 DraftKings points per minute without Ingram or Zion and is only getting 9% ownership. I do have some interest there. And then similarly on McCollum, not a great matchup, but the price tag did come down a little bit to 9K. He's averaged 1.3 DraftKings points per minute without either of those guys on the floor this year. He's getting 2% ownership. I don't think he's like a building block where you're going to look at your exposures and be like, oh, I have 30 or 40% McCollum. But if he's going to be 2% owned, then I can get to like 10, 12%. That's going to be a pretty nice spot to get to.
Anything else for the Pels?
You mentioned it, and I don't think I did, but Dyson Daniels certainly a decent value as well.
The Indiana Pacers are 4-point dogs in Oklahoma City, 240 total. No Halliburton, 20% ownership coming into Hield, basically to Nembhard, basically to Turner. Another 15 going to Mathurin, and everybody's favorite play, TJ McConnell, who is unplayable on FanDuel today at 7,600.
So you're somehow going to need to have TJ McConnell to win.
I don't even know if he can pay off a $7,600 price tag today.
I mean, he's capable of running into like 6 steals.
He is. I mean, he had 10.5 or whatever that one year.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Or maybe he had 9 in the first half and then finished with like 11 or something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I just look, it's Indiana OKC. This is going to be a track meet of a game. There's very little defense going to be played here. Whether it's Hield, Nembhard, Mathurin, Turner, like I want all of these dudes, but I'm not chasing that TJ McConnell ownership.
I mean, on DraftKings, I'm still okay with it.
I don't like him on DraftKings either.
I think he's going over owned, but if like at 5,500, he's a little over a fantasy point per minute guy. On average, you're probably getting 24, 25 minutes, which isn't going to look great. But he still has that path to getting more. To your point, though, the ownership is what sort of deters that. Like if you were getting, 5-6% ownership on TJ McConnell and you're saying, all right, he's going to project for like a little over 5x his salary or right around 5x his salary. But if he plays well, if things go right, he can get an extra 5 or 6 minutes. That becomes really interesting when the ownership is basically saying like, oh, we need him to get 5 or 6 extra minutes above his median to really feel good about it. That is kind of the problem. So, we have him at 16% ownership on DraftKings, 10% chance of being optimal. I think he's okay. I think there's just other spots that I'll get to. Nembhard at 5,200, pulling 14% ownership. Kind of the same thing. Not a very good point per minute guy. We've sort of seen the sample size grow now where he had put up really good numbers without McConnell or Halliburton on the floor, but so much of that was just because of that Golden State game where he went absolutely nuts. Now, obviously he's not always playing without McConnell on the floor, but you're also just getting a larger sample where this guy who hasn't been a very good points per minute guy at all this year, turns out he's not a very good points per minute guy without Tyrese Halliburton either, most likely. So that makes sense. At 5,200, he still can have success. He projects okay, but I think that he's probably getting a little bit too much ownership. Mathurin at 5,600, same kind of thing. He's fine, but probably going a little bit over owned. I'm more interested, I think, in Miles Turner at 7,100, 25% ownership, but also a 25% chance of being optimal. He has averaged about 1.2 DraftKings points per minute without Halliburton on the floor this year, has about a 24% usage rate. That is a lot of ownership still, and there are plenty of pivots, but I'm interested in getting there just given the upside that he gives you and the fact that he could play a couple more minutes like we saw last game, since they do need some offensive help with Halliburton out.
Yeah, my only problem with Turner is just the fact that center is center.
Yeah.
Like he clearly looks fantastic. There's just 100 different versions of him today. Joe Val at 6,900, Jared Allen, Mason Plumlee pulling that ownership, Evan Mobley, Gobert, if he's in, we'll have that conversation. Jaren Jackson, Şengün, like I didn't even name the, like getting to Jokic or Porzingis or Bam type guys are all paying all the way down to it's just, it's so, we have so many centers right now.
Yeah. Joe Val, just out of guys we've talked about recently, is the clear, obvious issue to Miles Turner because there's, you said, there's a lot of similar guys, but just because I have the numbers, fresh in my head, Joe Val is $200 less expensive and getting 1/3 the ownership. Miles Turner projects better, but between the combination of Miles Turner being in foul trouble or Miles Turner just, not playing well, everybody, the point of a median projection is they're not going to get to it a good amount of the time. It's too big of a gap. And when you start kind of multiplying that across all of these other centers, it creates a situation where even if Miles Turner looks good, you could certainly make the case to say all right, well, whatever, I'm going to play 10% Miles Turner and it's going to allow me to get over the field on Şengün and Valanciunas and whatever other centers, Jared Allen, whatever other centers in there you want. So that's not the way you have to go. You certainly could say I'm taking a Miles Turner stand today and that's going to be the guy. But there's just so many options where typically I end up getting a little bit flatter and being under the field.
And then we go to the OKC side here. And for the first time in what feels like ever, with everybody healthy, I think that SGA, Giddey, Williams, and Dort are all semi-priorities today, and maybe even more than semi-priorities. The prices work. The total works. This is a track meet game. These guys are playing legitimate minutes, and they have been mildly ramping up over the past week or two. I like the big four here. However you want to call it, however you want to define that.
That's
for the
one
Thunder.
way to. That's one name you could use.
Yes, but they look great today.
I feel like every show I do with you, you start to try and sell me on OKC having a more solidified rotation, and they never actually have a more solidified rotation. But
they have. They have recently.
I know. The four guys for sure. And to be fair, those were the four you mentioned this time. You have tried to make the case that they are condensing it in the past when that's been total bullshit. But you're right on this one. Like SGA, the minutes have always been there. Giddey's been playing more recently. Jalen Williams played 35 minutes last game. You're seeing his playing time come up. Lou Dort's playing a lot. All four of those guys look good. SGA is still the only one that I totally trust the minutes to be there. Like there's going to be a game probably in the next week or two where it's just like, why the hell did Josh Giddey play 26 minutes? But you can't expect that. And the playing time has been very good. So SGA only pulling 7% ownership. I like that as a tournament play. Giddey at 7,500, getting 19% ownership. Probably a little bit more than he deserves, but also makes a lot of sense given the playing time, given the matchup. Dort at 4,800, Jalen Williams at 5K. They both look fine as well. Not exciting options in terms of what they're going to do on the floor, but they give you, in Dort's case, small forward eligibility. In Williams' case, point guard and small forward eligibility. So it just makes them easy to get into lineups. It's similar to what we were talking about with Karis LeVert, with DeAndre Hunter, with somebody else that I mentioned and forgot about already that was getting ownership in that price range, Jalen McDaniels. Like it's just getting to that price range is useful because it's going to allow you to get to those centers and guards that you want when there's not really much in the way of forwards that you care about getting to.
I have the most of Giddey of any of these four guys, which I just hate because I don't like Giddey. It's the worst feeling in the world for me right now.
If he's going to actually be able to shoot, he's going to be really good.
He is. I just don't think that he's going to be able to shoot.
Yeah, I mean, he has this year, though, is the thing. Or recently.
Well, yeah, I mean...
And that's by Giddey standards.
Yeah. Okay, then we're on the same page there. Yeah. So I was going to say, 34% is still 34% on limited opportunities. Shooting 81% from the line is very interesting to me.
Yeah.
That's a 10-point increase. 71.
Okay, yeah, that's
a real change.
Yeah.
Anything else for OKC?
Nope.
All right, so we got to talk about the Clippers here. 7-point dogs in Utah is what I had earlier. I don't know if we've gotten any change to that line yet. It's 5.5 now, but they're on a back-to-back. Oh, wait, did we actually get that news? Because I've got an update now. This might actually be a little bit easier to talk about than it was. Paul George has been ruled out for today. I assume Kawhi Leonard is not playing today on a back-to-back. We don't normally see him in these scenarios. I don't know if they're going to do anything else. Like Luke Kennard hasn't played in ages, but could be back. I don't know what they're going to do with Reggie Jackson in this scenario. I find the Clippers to be difficult to talk about other than I think Terrence Mann kind of just looks good no matter what. He's just going to be out there. And especially if those two guys aren't playing, he's going to play a ton of minutes. Zubac's role isn't really changing. It just sort of solidifies him even more. You assume Norm Powell's going to be fine. I don't know if I think that he's the best play on today's slate, given the ownership, but those three options to me are just going to be around. I just don't know what's going to exist for the Clippers until we get their injury report.
Yeah. And I mean, right now we have Kawhi projected out, and I think that's probably the most likely case. So you'd be talking about, no George and no Kawhi, which opens up a lot for this team without either of them on the floor this year. Norm Powell's at 1.1 DraftKings points per minute. Zubac's 1.02. They would both look pretty good. Terrence Mann is at 0.84 and should be playing a lot of minutes here at 5,700. So not the most appealing price tag, but still projects pretty well if both of those guys are out. If Luke Kennard is playing, he's 3K flat and likely to play good minutes if he's in. And both of those guys are out. He's at 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute without them on the floor. He would look like an interesting option. He is shooting guard only on DraftKings. He'd be better if he had small forward, but I think you're just going to get a lot of ownership coming to this team, assuming that Kawhi is also out. Marcus Morris at 0.8 DraftKings points per minute and could see a little bit more playing time as well. Not surprising to anybody. Zubac's at 5,300 becomes very interesting to me at only 7% owned. He's just another way, kind of like we were saying with Mitchell Robinson. I can pay down at center so that it's easier to get to Luka, but I'm not sacrificing a ton in the way of points per minute. Like when you pay down at, small forward to these like shitty random guys, it's like, all right, I know I'm getting like a 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy. I'm hoping he runs into like 22, 24 DraftKings points, and then that Luka makes up for that. When you go to somebody like Mitchell Robinson or Zubats, you still have that path to them getting 35, 40 DraftKings points, and you be in a position where it's like, wow, I didn't even lose anything here. So I like Zubats, which again shouldn't surprise anybody. I always like Zubats.
I had a bunch of him last night. He didn't end up being like a guy that was ultra necessary. He played 35 minutes. If I would have known that, I would have had a lot more than the multiple times the field that I had.
He's been playing a lot of minutes when he's not in foul trouble, but then also with George out and assuming Kawhi is out, those minutes become more necessary as well.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Because you're just more likely to either get a situation with both of them out where Covington is the backup center, but then also playing minutes on the wing. So you can't have him play that many minutes as the backup center, or they just go to Moses Brown as the straight backup center, but just as a backup. If he's able to avoid foul trouble, there's a very good chance you're getting north of 30 minutes from Zubats.
All right.
In a good spot.
Well, watch the deeper dive later today, folks, so that we could actually break that one down. On the Utah side, we're waiting on the Q tag of Lauri Markkanen, still no Kelly Olynyk. If Markkanen is in, I find this team to be mostly uninteresting, except for one piece, and I don't think it matters if Markkanen's in or not. I really like $5,400 Walker Kessler. I got him in for 28 minutes right now, and even at 7%, this is just another guy in this list that I think is completely misowned in comparison to some of these other guys.
So I do think Lauri Markkanen matters for him, but I think he's going to be a good play one way or the other. It's just a matter of, is he a good tournament play like right now where he's projected for 6% ownership at 5,400, and I can just throw him into the mix with Robinson and Zubats and say, hopefully one of these guys goes for 35, 40 and gives me a huge leg up. If Markkanen is out, I think you're going to see Kessler's ownership skyrocket because he's been popular recently. People are very aware that Markkanen being out trickles down and gets you more minutes for Walker Kessler. So I think it's basically, if Markkanen is out, you're expecting 30 minutes, give or take, from Kessler. If he's in, I think I'd be expecting around 26, because you still are going to have Jared Vanderbilt as the backup center. You don't know exactly how that's going to play out. But even at 26 minutes at very little ownership, Kessler is going to be a solid play. It's just that he becomes a totally different play if Markkanen's out, where he projects a lot better and has a lot better chance of success, but that ownership also ends up skyrocketing. So he's going to look like a good play then, but then you're also going to start having the conversation where it's well, do I go to Walker Kessler or do I go to a 1/15 the ownership Mitchell Robinson or Zubats? But that's, a totally different conversation. Kessler, one way or the other, I think, is a good play tonight, whether it's as a contrarian option in tournaments or as a very popular, just clearly mispriced guy if Markkanen is out.
A little over 27 minutes per game in his starts when Markkanen has also started.
What about so my concern there is, what about when Vanderbilt is just coming off the bench? If you're not getting minutes alongside each other. Because I think there's only been a couple games like that.
Let me see if I can find something like that. So Walker Kessler and Markkanen both starting. There's only been 2 games where Vanderbilt didn't also start. Kessler played 57 minutes across that, so 28 and a half minutes.
Do you have the dates?
I do not. That's just a query that I ran.
All right. I think I can get them in a second.
I don't think I have a mechanism for that.
How do you spell Markkanen? Why am I
2 Ks?
Yeah, I knew that. I was just, the E's and the A's were looking weird. I don't know. Something's wrong with my brain. Is it Markkenan?
Anen.
A-N. That's why it looked weird. Okay, there we go. I had it flipped and I was like, this does not look right. All right, so
you're lucky you're good with numbers.
Yeah. So
letters are a pain in the ass. If we had to use Roman numerals, you'd be totally screwed.
Oh yeah, it'd be bad. All right, so what are we looking for? Markkanen in, but Vanderbilt coming off the bench.
Yeah. I don't know where you're going with this one, but we don't have the time for it.
I just wanted to see what the actual rotations look like. All right, so the 13th against Orlando was the most recent one. Kessler played 27 minutes. Vanderbilt played 21. I kind of just wanted to double check that you were just getting 48 minutes split between them. I think that it makes it so Kessler can certainly still play big minutes, but I'm just not totally convinced he does. Like the other game, it was 30.5 for Kessler, 17 for Vanderbilt. I just don't know that you can, over a larger sample, expect Vanderbilt to like live at 20 minutes.
Sure. All right. On the Minnesota side, for Minnesota at Denver, the Wolves are 8.5-point dogs in Denver, 232 total. We've got the same thing that we had on Monday. Q tag on Edwards, Q tag on Gobert, Q tag on Prince. It feels like Gobert's not going to play today. I mean, he limited on Saturday, played 13 minutes, got through 5 minutes of Monday's game out again. This just feels like a spot where he's going to sit. But for right now, if everybody's in, I don't find Minnesota to be all that interesting in a matchup against Denver.
Yeah, if everybody's in, I don't think it's very interesting at all. If Gobert sits, you get power forward eligible Naz Reid at 4,800 as just a clear top option. Really good point per minute guy. Has played huge minutes this year when he started in place of Gobert as well. So goes without saying he's going to look fantastic if Gobert is out. But yeah, if Gobert is in, I don't really see much of anything. Like if you want to gamble on Gobert at 7,300 at no ownership, fine. But you kind of have a couple things that you have to worry about. One being, does Rudy Gobert actually have a good game? And the other being, does he play more than 5 minutes? So like there's obviously a lot of risk there, but he's not going to be popular at all. So outside of that, it's kind of just tournament darts at, Kyle Anderson at 5,600. He's another one of those like small forwards where he doesn't project quite as well as the guys getting ownership, but he doesn't project that far away either. You can certainly get there at low ownership. Russell and Edwards always are playable in tournaments, but yeah, nothing that stands out here unless Gobert is out.
On the Denver end, they are on a back-to-back, so we don't know if they're going to do anything weird with rest. Jokic is 12% owned. That seems about right. I just prefer getting to Luka. Jamal Murray at 6,500 is the guy that I would want to get to in GPPs. To me, that's just an overwhelmingly interesting GPP play for today. No other priorities for me.
Yep. Really like Murray as long as he does play. Obviously, that's something to keep an eye on. But 6,500, just not getting enough ownership here. They only partially staggered him with Jokic yesterday, which is something that I've been keeping my eye on. They did it in the second half. They didn't do it in the first half. Michael Malone was not coaching that game. Don't know if he'll end up coaching today. I assume he won't. But that is something just kind of to keep in mind. There's a chance that Murray doesn't look quite as good just because Adelman doesn't stagger them maybe. But overall, I think 6,500, the upside he gives you just looks really good. Clearly, if you can get to Jokic, great. I just prefer Luka, like you said. One, because Luka projects better. Two, because there's just been a lot more cheap centers that we like than cheap guards. Aaron Gordon at 6,200, Porter at 5,500, both look fine if you land on them.
Final game of the night, Sacramento Kings are 3.5-point favorites in LA against the Lakers with a 245 total. For Sacramento, not much to write home about here. Everybody's available. And I don't think that anybody looks individually really good. I like Fox the most of anyone from Sacramento. There's no real ownership coming in, but holy shit, is this a good game environment? I
really like Sabonis if you can get there. He gives you, like $1,000 discount off of Jokic. He's only pulling 7% ownership. The guy's a walking double-double and gives you triple-double upside every time he's out there. He should destroy the Lakers. I really like getting to Sabonis where you can. I think he's a really good way to go if you can't get to Luka. Malik Monk at 4,100, just a pretty nice price tag for somebody that is capable of catching fire and plays more minutes if that happens. Fox at 8,300 is always going to be fine. Any of these wings, again, they're just in that same boat. Like Kevin Huerter at 5,400, Harrison Barnes at 5,900, Keegan at 4,400. None of these guys pulling ownership when you have very similar players pulling, 20% elsewhere. I like them as tournament pivots given the game environment.
Yeah. It's hard to pinpoint just one guy based on raw stats.
I think it's more likely to just be a team where across the board, it's just I'm getting, 1.5 to 2x the field, but none of them are just, top plays.
On the Lakers side, still no Walker, Davis, or Austin Reeves. Q tag on LeBron, but assuming he plays, he looks fine. He's just kind of expensive at 11.5 and 11.4, but he's been exceptional as of late. The guy that I want to get to most is actually $5,500 Dennis Schroeder. Not that it's exciting, it's just there's a lot of minutes. Russ is up to 9K, which is incredible to see. I don't really know how you go there. To me, it's Schroeder and LeBron are the two, I don't want to say priorities, but the guys I'm most likely to get to. I doubt I get to much else. Maybe Troy Brown, but he's bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I see it as well. I think you could get to some Thomas Bryant also. He's 6,100, dealt with foul trouble last game and only played 18 minutes, or at least first half foul trouble last game, then also just didn't play a lot in the second half. But given the matchup, if he's able to avoid foul trouble, it is a good spot against the Kings. I kind of like Just the idea that he's not getting any ownership, and if he plays well, he could get the minutes. The case for LeBron, even though he doesn't project as well as Jokic or Luka, would just be that you're getting to pay up at those positions where people are playing Jalen McDaniels, and you pay up there. You get these really good point per minute, cheaper guards and centers. Gives you a very high upside lineup, even though it doesn't project quite as well. And you're also getting lower ownership. And I'm with you on Schroeder. Don't want to get there. Like, want isn't the right word, but at no ownership for somebody playing 32 minutes against the Kings, I'll take my chances.
Anything else we should touch on here?
Nope.
You and I will be back for the deeper dive at 5:30. You've got some BetPro videos coming out today too?
Yep. BetPro video should be out around 1.
There we go, everybody. Make sure you're checking them out. The BetPro product has been absolutely crushing it since it's been released. You want to make sure you're checking it out. There's a free trial available in the links in this description. NFL Strategy Show coming up next. We'll talk to you later. Thank you to Prize Picks. We're out of here. Peace.